Hey friends, I'm Jess Connolly. I'm an author, a coach, a Bible teacher, and a local church leader, and I love talking to real people who know what it means to have full lives, but also want to walk in abundance. This podcast is for you. It's not my podcast, it's ours. It's for people who crave lighthearted conversations and deeply spiritual truth. It's for people who are busy, tired, waiting, growing, dreaming, working, or praying about what's next. Wherever you're listening from, if it's quiet, mundane, or busy, I am praying for you, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Well, friends, I cannot believe it's been a year since we shifted the podcast and launched it officially as the Jess Connolly Podcast. And woo, baby, it's been a year. I had no idea a year ago that I'd be hitting record every single week during so many sequential and tumultuous seasons. And I know that for you, you've been living life and experiencing weaknesses and strengths. And we've all been just in it. And honestly, some of my favorite moments of this last year, as hard as it's been, have been hearing from you all as you listen, as you cry, as you ask questions with me while you listen to each episode of our podcast. This week, we're bringing back my best friend, pastor, and favorite podcast guest, Nick Connolly, as we kick off year 2 of the Jess Connolly Podcast. It's not my podcast, it's ours. And we're back, baby. Let's go. All right, Incon, you just told the gals in the room, the producers, if you will, that you have literally no idea what we're talking about.
I have no idea, but I just want to say thank you for having me back. I always feel like the last time is the last time. Like, surely they're not going to have me back one more time. And you guys keep calling. This is great. And I don't have a phone to call or anything. So
I think if you remember last year when I told you, like, hey, I'm so excited, we're switching the Jess Connolly Podcast, you know, from Go and Tell Gals to the Jess Connolly Podcast. I was like, I kind of want you to just think of yourself as the co-host. Just pop in there when you want to. You know what I'm saying?
I'm Gail to your Oprah.
Oh, that's what I am. Not true.
You are Oprah.
You're
and I'm
Stedman
Gail.
and Oprah and like all of her dogs and her compound in Malibu.
I'll take it.
That's who you are to me. Okay. You came on episode 2, which was right around the same time last year. I think it was like a couple weeks later. And in that, we talked a lot about the fall. And we actually like went heavy on strategy and like, how are we going to make it? But before we get into that, that's really what I want to talk about today. And like, how are we feeling about the fall? Before I want to get into that, will you just like take a retrospect, walk with me through the last year of the podcast, like highs, lows, ups, downs? Which is your favorite you've listened to? Of your podcast? Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I definitely have listened to a few of them.
Okay, I was about to say, have you listened to any of them?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I promise. Hand to God.
I mean, you don't really have to listen to the produced one because you're usually like 6 feet away while we're recording.
I know, but I had listened to them. I'll have to report back.
Okay, that's fine. It's
but
good.
You know how my memory works.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
That's true.
Yeah, so.
That's okay. Well, we've had a year of the Jess Connolly Podcast. I'm saying like, we're back, baby, but it feels to me like we're back. And I want to just give some context for anybody listening. I did record last week's episode kind of in real time, like, hey, end of summer, how are we all feeling? But before that, I took a long break from actually recording podcast episodes. We pre-recorded most of the summer, which was like we didn't even say this, guys. We didn't say it on the podcast, so I'm telling you now, but they were all intentionally meant to be like hot topics, things that you want to talk about, things that you're already talking about. I had some highlights from the summer that I have to say. So we recorded all of those in the spring and then they launched over the summer. So I got a break from recording in the summer, but I had some highlights from those episodes that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Did you listen to any of those?
I just remember one that I really liked.
Okay.
When you talked about women in ministry.
That was our highest listened episode.
Wow. How about that? It was probably because of me.
What's the number, gals? It's maybe 3. It's about Barbie.
Yes,
it's called We Need to Talk About Barbie.
Yeah,
that is our highest listened episode so far.
See, it's all coming back to me.
Okay. Some highlights if you guys didn't catch them this summer. There's an episode with Ashley Island that's like, how do we talk about politics and hard topics?
Sheesh. Ashley
Island wrote a book called Say Good. And I have to say, you know, we recorded that episode. I said, Ashley, will you come on? This feels really helpful. You know, it's an election year. But the thing I want to highlight about that episode is that you know this about me, and I shared this a little bit on that episode with Ashley. Like, you know that I'm a person, which is interesting about me. Like, I'm an Enneagram 8. You would think I'm not scared to talk about hard topics, but like, I really don't. I think I just, especially in the last few years of our life, I'm like, I want to save my emotional margin.
Yep.
I don't want to talk about things.
Yep.
Specifically, like, I kind of feel like, hey, if we're not on the same team about how to communicate, I don't want to communicate.
Yeah.
So I don't like getting in debates online. I just don't feel like it's helpful.
Yes.
And because of that, I would say more tense times like an election year might make me in the past feel anxiety. Talking to her that day and reading Say Good shifted something in me.
Wow.
And I'm not scared at all of an election year now. I mean, I want, God's will to be done and his kingdom to come, but I don't feel scared to like talk about, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
Even the other day, like real talk, we had like a moment where I had like, not a disagreement, but like a more elevated exchange, I would say, with a friend talking about like our responses to what happened at the Olympics.
Yes.
And like what we thought about it.
Yes.
And I was able to afterwards be like, hey, I just want you to know, I went to that person and said, like, I hear your perspective. I apologize if I sounded heated about this. Here's my heart about that and why that matters to me. And they were able to say like, same, I appreciate that. Like, I don't know,
Just noting for those keeping track that it was also another Enneagram 8. So maybe
it also was another Enneagram 8. Yeah.
Speaking each other's language.
But also afterwards, I was like, I think that's the first like slightly tense conversation I've had about like a cultural issue that people are kind of agreeing or disagreeing on for a long time. And I didn't feel crippled by it. I felt like prepared to speak life over all humanity and also to the person in front of me.
Yes.
And
what's so interesting about conversations like that is there's usually like a little bit of truth in everything that everyone's saying most of the time. I'm not saying all the time, but most of the time. But what I find is that where the hang up comes is when other people think that their truth is more important than the other person's truth.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of times where the disconnect comes is like, both people can say true things, but for whatever reason, the other person sees their truth as more true. Therefore, the other person's truth is false. And it's just like a weird thing that you can't talk about or get anywhere with people because there's like, it's almost in marriage. Like when you have a marriage, you know that you are going to have heated discussion and fights.
Yeah.
And it's probably more important to know how to fight than to know like what you think about each fight. And so I think we as a people don't know how to have conflict or conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And so that is the biggest issue is it's like, man, there's going to be a million other things that come into the cultural moments that are hard, that are tough. And we've got to be like, in marriage where you find that language of common ground where you're able to say, hey, like, we need to learn how to disagree. We need to learn how to like see each other's perspective, and then we need to learn how to come together. And so I thought you did a great job in that moment. Both of y'all did.
The way you phrased it, that really is what that podcast episode's about. So I'm saying like, that was a highlight for me. It really is like, not like what you're fighting for is important. And also how you fight is really important, and how you disagree and how you communicate is really important. So if you missed that episode, go listen to it.
That would be me because I hadn't listened to that one yet, so that's great.
But it's interesting, like a friend of ours who is also in ministry was like, she said something along the lines of like, I don't even know if you remember this conversation, was in passing, but she was like, guys, how are we going to make it through this political season? Yeah. And she was like leading our people, like handling the internet. And I was like, I think I feel okay about it.
Yeah, I don't handle the internet.
I know you don't, but like, I think I feel really equipped and ready to even lead our people through this.
I love that. That's exactly what you said is so true. Is like, I think we all feel this like hyper responsibility for places and things that God hasn't given us dominion over. And so it gives us more anxiety, fear, and stress. And God's like, hey, I actually have given you like this wide, broad green field over here to steward and harvest and develop. And you're out there trying to like plant the world.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a hard task.
It's very true. Psalm 118, you brought me out to a spacious place. Hey, on one more note about universal truths, like there are some obvious universal truths, especially with faith. There's some universal truths, but I agree with what you're saying. Like, right, everybody's perspective is shaded by their own perspective. Can I tell you this line that I heard in seminary that, you and I were talking the other day with my brother-in-law and sister, Katie and Josh, and Josh was saying, like, the beauty of seminary is like you come out with like 6 really good phrases. Mm-hmm. Like you spend however many years, read thousands of pages, write a million papers, but like you really come out with like 6 good phrases. Yep. I don't think I've told you this one that somebody told me in seminary. One of my professors said, anytime you say like, about the Bible, this is common sense. You need to realize like there is no common sense because number one, there's the sense in which the words were written to a specific audience in their cultural context. That's one sense, but everybody reads and interprets, scripture with their own lens, with their own faith background. And so there are universal truths, but there is no common sense. And I was like, wow, that's so good. I just want to hand that to anybody listening. Like if you find yourself saying like, well, I read this, obviously this is common sense. Like it's not, it's your common sense of how you interpret it. But number one, that doesn't mean it was the intended sense to the original audience. And it also doesn't include all the other people from all around the world who will interpret in their own lens.
That's good. What your listeners need to know, because you probably wouldn't tell them, is that you are a phenomenal seminary student. And I feel like I'm going to seminary twice through you. So like I went once and now I'm going again through you because you are giving me all the good nuggets.
Well, what's the number one phrase I use with you when I talk about seminary?
You might already know this.
Because I think you do know it all.
No, not at all.
You know a lot about the Bible and about the Lord. But I did tell them on last week's episode, that's kind of you, number one, to say I'm a good seminary student. I did tell them on last week's episode that I fell in love with seminary and I did trauma bond with my textbook. Some people have a stuffed animal.
You have a textbook?
I have a textbook. I'm addicted to that thing. I love it so much. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Here's what I really want to get to in this episode. Last year, I'm already laughing. Last year, we sat down, just pie in the sky, just rose-colored glasses. And we recorded an episode on The Fall is Coming, ready to coach, ready to help, ready to shepherd. Then what happened is that the fall took a bat and beat us over the head. And then you and I are watching a really scary TV show right now about gang violence.
That's not what it's about, but carry on. That's a part of it.
There's gang violence in this TV show. I mean, it's like old-timey gang violence.
That's your hermeneutic.
That's my hermeneutical perspective. The show is about more than gang violence, so I'm saying there's gang violence. But when I watch it, I'm like, oh, that was life to me and Nick Connolly the last year. Just funny. It's on the ground, but let's just keep going at it with a bat.
Yeah.
So the fall really beat us up. The winter, just like kicked us in the liver. The spring said, hold on, I'm not done with you yet.
Hold my beverage, depending on what you drink.
The summer said, you thought your suffering was over? You didn't even know.
Just kidding. Yeah.
So being that I think both of us would say we've just lived through the hardest year of our life. And we are not sure the page is turned.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
How do you feel going into the fall?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things I'm learning is with the pages turned is I think a lot of times we want this like page to turn and one thing ends and another thing begins. And sometimes that happens, but I really do wonder if the page is there and it's actually a greater story and there's like suffering and blessing in the midst of that page.
Yeah.
And so are the things that we are going through and have gone through really, 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 really tough and hard and devastating things? Absolutely. Don't want to make light of it. But I think where I've maybe have gotten myself in trouble in the past is thinking that the page is going to turn.
Yeah. When
actually it's like, oh, God is like working the story. And I guess the page does turn so he can keep writing. But, even in the midst of all that, it's still happening. And I think when you get to be our age, just the nature of the things that you encounter are based off of stage of life. And so death is a little more regular. The trials that we experience are a little more age specific. And so, I just take all that into consideration when I think about, where we've been and what God's been doing.
Yeah.
In regards to the future, if I'm being honest, I told you this the other day as I sat down with another pastor and leader, and it was like an incredible moment because I think he doesn't live here. He doesn't live in the States. And those interactions for me are just always incredible interactions that really, really, really warm my soul and encourage my heart. And I just was listening to him talk, and I think he's 70. I think I heard that right. He's 70, and he's been in ministry for a long time. And our giftings and how he does ministry really kind of are similar in my understanding.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to him talk, and he was just talking with such a language of faith. And I told you this, as I said, hey, I used to talk that way.
Yeah.
And what was hilarious is I think I was telling everybody in the room that we were in is I used to talk that way. And I think ministry took it out of me.
Yeah.
Is that I have just, we're I think year 11 coming up on our church, and in life, we've been in ministry a lot longer than 11 years. And so I feel like what's so interesting is the main thing I need for life and my job, I feel like I don't have, because both of those things have like beat it out of me. So long story short is I really want to recover the language of faith.
Yeah. Because
I think the other language that I've probably picked up over the years has been a language of fear. And so even just thinking about the fall, last fall, that was when my panic attacks and stuff came into the picture, which had never been a part of my story at all. It just kind of happened out of nowhere. And then that led into intense spiritual battle. And so on one hand could say, oh gosh, is it going to happen again this fall? Are these going to be days like last year? Or how do I recover that language of faith? So I feel like for me, I'm trying to figure out, number one, all the ways that I'm speaking a language of fear. And then number two, how do I recover that language of faith? So when I think about the fall, that's what I'm really going to try to focus on.
Yeah, that's good. Can I tell you how I feel about the fall?
Absolutely.
If I think about how I felt last fall, I think, if I'm being honest, if somebody went back and listened to that, I think the episode was called The Fall is Coming. I think...
No pun intended. Just kidding.
No, I think the pun was intended. Yeah. I think I felt like I had strategy, but I felt really fearful about making it work.
Yeah.
And I think I felt really fearful about making everybody happy. And just privately between you and me and this whole podcast, what God did for me in this year of extreme grief and suffering, one of the main things I think he did for me is that he said, we are going to deal with this issue of codependency. And I don't think I am completely have it eradicated from my life. If you're not familiar with the phrase codependency, I won't give you the psychology definition of it, but it's essentially the tendency to feel like you need to meet everyone else's needs and also be important and essential to people that is really important to you too. And I think I knew last fall I had an issue with codependency. God had been showing me that, through therapy, but also through writing Tired of Being Tired. But starting with the grief of watching you be in so much pain and realize I could not fix it. And a pain point of our marriage in the past has been I don't let you be sad and I don't let you feel broken and I don't let you have a bad day. Because I'm a coach and because I want to fix it and because I struggle with codependency. So going through a season where I had to let you be where you were at started, I think, some of the more embodied healing. And then obviously walking through grief, not being able to even help the people I love the most grieve and knowing I actually only can take care of myself. I don't think the word is selfish. I don't know if you have a word, maybe it's autonomous, but the days after Gibson died, maybe the 3 weeks after, I don't know that I've had a period of my life where I've only been able to focus on my own pain so much. I know other people existed, but I could only get through the day, and take care of my mom. That's what I felt like I could do.
Yep.
And then a lot of the trials that we went through this summer that are more private, really, again, afforded me this opportunity of the privilege of understanding my place and God's place and surrender and what I can do and what I can't do. So that being said, this is one of the first falls that I'm going in with very little strategies yet. I know I'll get it, but I'm not stressed about it yet.
Yeah.
But I don't feel scared.
Yeah, that's good.
I feel like I think I'm going to know how to take care of my soul. I think God has shown me. And I don't feel scared to let people down in that anymore.
Yeah.
That's the grace of grief of like, you really do learn like your worth when you have nothing to offer anyone.
Yeah.
And then when you do show up, it's because you feel like you're supposed to and you're called to, not because you're trying to prove something for someone. So I don't have strategy, but I don't have fear.
Yeah. That's really good. I forget when it was, but it was like a month ago when we had spent some time on vacation. And one of the things that we had talked about was remaining.
Yeah.
And I feel like so much of the secret sauce, if you will, of the fall is going to be remaining in the Lord and in Jesus, because I've always looked at that word abide and remain interchangeably. And I've always felt like abiding is the work that I have to do to stay close to God, but it's actually like remaining. I'm already close. And so what happens is everything around me is what knocks me off of that remaining, like of where I become unaware of his power, his presence, and like all those things. Yeah. I think going back to what you said is just that concept of no strategy, but like a lot of hope, because like we're close to him and he's close to us. And we've been through the hardest, darkest days, and there's probably more hard and dark days ahead. And that's okay, because like we're going to remain in him and he's going to be in us. And that's essentially at the simplest form. That's what it means to walk with Jesus.
Okay. Can I tell you this other interesting dichotomy I'm feeling about fall? So if I could say that all concisely, I would say I feel some lack of fear about setting boundaries, about like operating within my spiritual, physical, mental, emotional sphere of influence, what God's given me to steward, what he hasn't given me to steward. On the other side, I haven't told you this at all. It's very
so excited
personal,
about this.
very private. And maybe I've told you a little bit, but like, I also feel like the way forward for me, and now I feel like I sound dramatic, but because we've been saying it all summer, it's what you just said about even that guy that you talked to, and you said, I used to talk like this. But I feel like there's a return to more like risky, vibrant mission in my personal life that is going to help me feel more alive.
Yes.
Today, I was studying James a little bit.
Okay.
And I was like, faith without works is dead. Did you know that Martin Luther really did not want the book of James to be included in the Bible? He hates it.
See, these are things I don't know.
Isn't this wild?
I don't know.
He in his translation of the Bible, Martin Luther's book, he like only puts it at the end, but he calls it like a lesser epistle. I mean, he like kind of basically says like it needs to be canonized because it's definitely from James, the half brother of Jesus, but he doesn't like it because he says it doesn't teach like a worksless faith. Which
I think, if we're all honest, I don't think a lot of us like James because it like calls it out.
That's what it said.
It's a spade. So
this book I'm reading is really interesting. I'm going to tell you about it.
Okay.
I'll link this book in the show notes. It's called The Scandalous Message of James. And it says like, if James was a letter that was written to the church right now, it would be intercepted by the government. Because it is about like overthrowing power and wealth. And like, and essentially like, if you do not care for those least, then you like your faith is dead. But I was reading it this morning and I was like, faith without works is dead. And we've got a nation of Christians who are like, oh, my faith just feels dry. I don't really want to spend time with God anymore. Worship doesn't hit for me anymore. And I'm like, right.
It's dead.
Because you're missing out on the beautiful part of like being about the gospel for other people who haven't heard it and need it and are broken and weary. And they're our neighbors. So I've told you some things that I like feel like privately for me are going to come back for some just like private personal mission. And that makes me feel excited about the fall. Yeah. But that leads into the boundaries because this is what, I'm preaching to the choir because you feel this more than I do maybe, but like I can't keep blessing the blessed and spending time with only Christians if I am going to be about showing up in where God's placed me. Yeah.
It is so interesting that 11 years into having our church, the greatest obstacle to mission is the church, and that it's like ourselves and like the way that we live and how we live. And I'm really excited to recover those former things.
Cheers. High five. Okay. Here's another thing that's helping us this fall. You and I have been leading Life School now for about 8 months.
8 months.
I'm just going to quote you what you said in our July meeting of Life School. If you don't know, Life School is a co-ed coaching community that Nick and I started back in January.
Yep.
It's basically what it sounds like. It's coaching for your whole life.
Yep.
We have a community of some incredible people in all walks of life who lead in different capacities. We've got moms, we've got school teachers, we've got businessmen, entrepreneurs, we've got nurses, and we meet once a month and we do coaching on different areas of your life, either like taking inventory of your life or your rhythms or maybe your pace of life. That's what we have been talking about recently. And then we also have office hours where people come and ask us questions, and maybe we open the question up to the whole group. And basically it's just coaching. It
is highly affordable coaching. It's all the things that I would want to ask someone. It's everything that we've longed for. Yeah. But maybe we're just trying to make it accessible for everyone.
It's what we wish we had had. Yep. And it's $30 a month basically to have a life coach and an entire community of people. Yep. We love Life School. There will be a link in the show notes for you to join. We would love to have you join. You can also go to jessconnolly.com/lifeschool. But in this particular module that we're working on, this like set of 2 months, we're working on pace. And I'm going to just quote you what you said. You said the teacher has become the student.
Oh, big time.
Will you just talk a little bit about how like this module, and tell me how, if it's helping, how you think it'll translate into the fall, et cetera?
I think even marrying what we just said is, I think usually the life that we long for is sometimes the life that we aren't allowed to live, and allowed meaning that we don't give ourselves permission to live it.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that happens to me is through pace. And so how I live my life practically doesn't match up with how I want to live my life spiritually or emotionally. And part of it is because I do a lot of things out of obligation and the should-haves. Like I should do this, rather than like, what has God put me on this planet to do? Yeah. And so I felt like pace, that module really like unlocked some things for me and helped me see a way forward where I could actually live the life that I believe God's called me to live. And does it mean that every day is 100%? Absolutely not. But I think a day at 50% of how I've been wired and designed is better than what I'm living in right now. And so for me, I mean, even just giving the language of, okay, how do I want, even in the midst of having to have a job and be in response to other people, what are the things that I can control? And then also just giving me tools and handles for like how to communicate to others. Because I think like, we see this all the time, is like when you, not that there's anything wrong with this, but when you want to get off Instagram and you get offline, you just hold up 2 fingers and you're like, see you in the fall.
Yeah.
And you just cannot lovingly do that to people. If you're going to like be in authentic community and relationship with people, you can't just say, hey, I'm logging off, I'll see you in 2 months. Like, you know, there's got to be ways to like enter into community, enter into relationships, enter into leadership, enter into mission, but also keeping your main things the main things. And so I felt like it just gave me language to be able to communicate to people, which I just have really struggled with in the past. So the teacher definitely became the student. And it was like, I mean, I felt like the last module when we were teaching it, I was like, okay, here's, you know, you teach it and then I'll tell you what I put as my answers, because it just felt like a counseling/coaching session between you and I, which was beautiful.
Well, and I will say, like, even kind of going full circle back around to the beginning of our conversation, I mean, what I was able to process by working on that module was I actually think I have a pretty good, comfortable piece with my pace. I know how to build my schedule with margin for me, but I have to release you to figure out how to do that for you.
Yes.
And I have to adjust, as you're my spouse, to what is life-giving to you.
Yes.
And so I would say, especially if you're in a marriage where you guys feel like you have different paces or even different desires for paces, please join Life School together. Heads up, if you join Life School together, you don't both have to join. Just one of you join and you watch together.
Yep.
And again, it's life coaching for $30 a month with an incredible community attached to it. Also, when you join Life School, you get all the past modules. So you could just log in and you get 7 months worth of coaching. All right, I want to do an honorable mention before we move off of the fall to bullet point, popcorn, share any fall rhythms that we might be excited about.
Oh, I got those.
Bring it. I want to hear.
Sailing.
Heck yeah.
Hopefully some continued pottery.
Yeah.
Because we're potters now.
We're potters
we
now.
We
throw.
We throw down.
You still have the clay on your shoes. I can see it right now.
Yeah, I do. I haven't had a chance to wash them off.
Be honest, you kind of like it though.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's giving, am I a painter or I don't know what it is right now.
Yeah.
Do I care? That's what I'm kind of feeling right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got to do that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to rediscovering our specific mission.
Yeah.
And expanding the kingdom.
Yeah.
Where I've been like on a Portuguese kick for a long time. So I'm still trying to like get Portuguese under my belt. So I'm continuing that, learning my lessons.
Yeah.
Those are a few for me.
Those are my top two. The sailing, we're going to learn to sail. We're going to take sailing lessons. I think might be the perfect hobby for us. It's so physical. It's in the sunshine.
Yep.
We don't have a boat. Probably not going to ever have a boat. But we can go on somebody else's boat and pull some ropes.
Yep.
You know, it just sounds nice. It's pretty.
I can't wait to be your first mate.
Some other fall rhythms I'm excited about. I think I told you this after coming back from the summer. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I just like Sabbath. Mm-hmm. I just like a regular old fall Sabbath.
Yeah.
When you're like, it's just a day off. Mm-hmm. Nothing special. Just a deep breath.
Yeah.
I think I look forward to some fall Sabbaths. Mm-hmm. Like just to remember, like the rest is not over because summer's over.
Exactly.
You know, I will say, I mean, I'm about to be done with the writing season.
Yes.
Something I didn't see coming this summer is that I ended up writing another book. Mm-hmm. It will be done in August. Mm-hmm. It has come quick and fast. Mm-hmm. It's been very beautiful.
Yep.
But I'm going to tell you a little secret. I don't know that I can share a lot about the book right now, except for I'll just say this, that I had another book in mind to write. I was like not in a great space. I was like, listen, I don't know if you want to hear a book from me. Actually, I'm going to write a children's book at some point. I'm contracted to write a children's book. And they were like, you could write that children's book this summer. And I was like, I think that would be the darkest children's book ever. I am not a ray of sunshine
kids
right
having
now.
Nightmares.
And nobody would want their kids taught by me right now. Give me a couple years and I'll write a killer kids book. I've got dreams about Messy Jessie. Mm-hmm. I want to write some Messy Jessie kids books. But that being said, my editor at the time, at the beginning of the summer, said, she was like, I don't ever say this to people, basically, but if you wanted to, you could just write the book you need right now. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been doing. Mm-hmm. Is like waking up and calling myself up.
Yep.
1,000, 1,100 words a day. But do you want to know a secret about the book that I'm going to share right now? That is just an interesting little factoid. I listen to the podcast every week after it comes out. Just, make sure no blasphemies occurred from my own mouth. And I realized that I say the title of this next book in my podcast intro.
Wow.
Yeah. It's something I say often.
Okay.
So
you just, now everybody's got to go back and listen to every episode.
I actually say the phrase of the title of my next book. But I really am excited about this next book.
Because we went back and forth. Like,
well, what's crazy about this title is that it's everywhere, all in my life. Like my friend Liz is in the room today who, works on our team. She actually made a print with these words for our office, like not to sell, just for us, with these words on our office a couple months ago. It's an important phrase to me, but I didn't know it was going to be the title of the book until I'd already started writing it.
God did.
But in light of that, do you want to share a little bit about what you think you might be writing?
Wow. I honestly don't know.
I don't feel like I know what you're going to be writing.
I go back and forth.
I mean, I tell you all the time what I want you to write.
Yeah, but that is a phrase. It can mean many things. And so I'm still going back and forth.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do like a voting thing.
Oh my gosh, I love you so much. Maybe I could just vote.
Yes, you vote. One vote.
I'll set up a poll for you, but I'll be the only one who answers.
Okay, done.
That being said, I do think that what I'm writing now will shift the way I show up online for the next year.
Yep.
I think I'll still talk about fatigue. Mm-hmm. I think I'll still talk about living fully awake. Mm-hmm. But I also think I'm going to talk more about
X.
Amen.
Can't wait.
Will you pray for everybody for their fall, for anybody who might be feeling fear about it, for anybody who might not be wanting it to come?
Yeah.
For people who might have like started feeling hopeful about this fall and then they listen to this episode and they're like, wow, you guys are real downers.
Lord bless them. Yeah, I would love to. Father, thank you for this podcast and thank you for the gift that it is to a huge community all around the world. And God, I just pray for the fall. I pray that you would teach us how to live with expectancy and let go of the expectations. I pray that you would help us have eyes forward rather than fixed on the past and the almost the desire for an everlasting summer. God, we thank you for the rest and we give gratitude and gratefulness to the things that you have done over the summer. And God, we look forward to the fall and we look forward to the season of harvest and we look forward to the season of growth. God, we look forward to cooler temperatures if we are in hot places of the world. And most of all, we just look forward to what you are going to do in and through us in the hard and in the good. Father, we love you and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for letting me be your Gale.
And my Studman and my Malibu house and my dogs.
And your dogs.
Friends, I'm so grateful you listened to today's episode. Thanks for spending time with me. It would mean the world to me to connect with you. So you can send me a DM on Instagram at Jess A. Connolly or head to my website, jessconnolly.com for more ways to connect. If you have a minute to subscribe and leave a review of the podcast wherever you listen, it would massively help us reach more people with the good news that they can live fully awake. Let's go.